Hello and welcome. My name is Levi, and today I'm going to be going over my Mercenary Witchhunter build, who moonlights as a mace swinger. So this will be a good time. Almost no one is using Mercenary Witchhunter to utilize maces, but I found that it's actually incredibly good. And the route that I've taken, I think, is on par, if not better, than the traditional route. I will be showing a few things here that will explain why and how it functions. And as you saw in the video, he hits pretty darn hard, and I have made significant weapon and armor upgrades since I made that earlier video. So let's go ahead and get into it here by starting off with a mace. So the mace that I'm using, I specifically wanted the one that had the implicit of crushes on hit, because it actually reduces their physical damage threshold by 15%, so it can actually take it negative. I self-crafted this one. I got lucky with Perfect Orb of Augmentation to be able to get a T1 Perfect Fizz roll, and then a hybrid T2 increased physical damage. I ended up settling on the increased Fizz with the reduced attack speed. I had used almost 8 Omens of Light, and I never once rolled the standard increased physical damage roll. So I just eventually gave up and decided that settling for about 145% there, 144% as you can see, was perfectly fine. After that, I needed physical damage leads to life. That was a necessity because I had removed it off my ring to get other stats, and then life per enemy killed just happened to be nice while clearing mobs to keep my life pool up, and then the +3 to all attack skills. I do use my life as mana technically, so when I use skills, it burns my life. And we'll get into that here shortly. So moving on to my left ring, nothing particularly special about it. I was just simply looking for as much resistance as necessary in order to meet the 75 res cap. I need the attribute dexterity because I have to have a minimum of 78 in order to wear my helmet, and because it does have the ward on it. And then as far as the physical damage to attacks, that was just a nice added bonus. Flat evasion is great because it helps my sorcery ward. I am using source ward. Standing still, it's about 7,300. In combat, it's closer to 9,500, and when under banner, it gets up to over 16,000. So I have a significant amount of source ward. Moving on to the right ring, it's just once again more, physical damage to attacks, lightning damage to attacks, and once again just filling the void of resistances in order to hit that 75% cap. The implicit on that of the rarity of items found, not necessary. I don't really run any rarity on my gear. And so that was, it's just a little bit of an added bonus to assist with the rarity, but I don't believe it's necessary in any way, shape, or form. Moving on to my amulet. This is the third or fourth iteration of my amulet that I thought would be an endgame. I had no idea about the granting skills that were completely free, by the way. So once I found out that you could get Eternal Rage for free, I decided to go ahead and pick one of those up. Having the 2 spirit was necessary because I'm running some additional support spirit gems that are helpful. Global armor and evasion, that actually adds a significant amount of source ward, which technically adds life. And of course the +4 to melee skills. The increased skill speed, not necessary. It just happened to be the only one that was available within the price range that I was wanting to spend. And then of course allocating Zarok's Gift for a jewel socket was nice as well. But yeah, that's the amulet. Next is the chest piece. I had originally just a rare chest piece that had nearly 2,000 armor and 2,000 evasion, which is perfectly fine. I wanted to be able to find a way to get more damage, and so I picked this up due to the intimidation, because enemies within range, they do 10% reduced damage, and if they're also within range, they take 10% increased damage. So I was looking for ways to buff my damage, which is extremely difficult as a mace build, as I'm sure many of you are well aware. And this chest piece fulfilled all those needs. It still has good armor and evasion. And the big thing is technically avoiding all those different types of elemental hits or physical hits, chaos hits, significantly boost your evasion percentages or evasion chances. In POB, my effective HP standing still not in banner is around 450 to 500,000. In banner, actually fully juiced, is closer to 800 to 900,000. So it's been surprisingly good, and it was a significant damage boost. So this helmet was a no-brainer. If any of you are familiar with the Mercenary Witchhunter pathing, you'll know that it goes right by several clusters that give significant bonuses while surrounded. And so you must get the one that is -4 or 4 fewer enemies. That is an absolute must, because that way, if there's even one enemy around when you're fighting bosses, you're still taking advantage of all those bonuses. And we'll get into the Atlas tree here in a bit, but that's the primary reason to use that helmet. I apologize because I forgot to include the boots in the actual video, so I'm going to include them now. The boots, just simply pick them for high armor and evasion. I wanted max movement speed, and you want as much movement speed as you can because, once again, Stampede is affected by such a thing. So as far as the cold resist, it was just filling a void. The armor applies elemental damage is also greatly important. The reduced shock duration, not really that significant. It just happened to be the additional mod on there, but those are the boots. When I was making the original clips at the beginning, I was not using Mage Blood. Mage Blood was a much later addition to the build. I went for as much defense as you possibly can, and that's how I'm able to achieve almost 16,000 Source Ward fully juiced. I needed the Bismuth for the 45 resist all. Doesn't include Chaos, sadly. But yeah, the Granite, Stignit, and Jade, it's pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to the gloves, just goes for as much armor as you can. There's a node on the Atlas tree that allows you to get as much evasion as you have armor on the gloves. And I'll show that. The double chaos, it came that way. I didn't change it because it filled the void. +2 to melee skills. Nothing really special about it. Just as much armor as you can get, and not armor and evasion because of that skill node on the tree. So let's get into the flask. Just go for as much life recovery as you can. That's about it. As far as the charms, we need immunity to freeze. We don't need the unique one because we don't have ES. I am using Rite of Passage. Once again, this was a very late edition. It is nice. It's not necessary. It helps for mapping with the increased movement speed and the increased skill speed. It does help out. As far as the fall of the Axe Silver Charm, this thing's a must-have. Slows are brutal, especially when 1 second is added to almost all of your attack times, if not more. And then being able to get Onslaught while you have it. So let's move on to our secondary weapon, or in this case, technically our weapon slot number 1. Wanted a Scepter because I want to get as much aura magnitude as possible. We have the Idol that gives it 25%. I sanctified a bunch of them until I got a little over 20%. It got me 1 more percent in the banners. But yeah, aura magnitude significantly boosts the effectiveness of your banners. As far as the shield, that piece is pretty irrelevant. I have 2 intelligence on it to allow myself to use a higher level malice, but I don't really use malice in combat. I only use it, the scepter, for the banners. So taking a look at the difference in the effectiveness of the banner with the scepter versus without, and also the allocated skill nodes, the banner base is 30% armor and evasion and 30% movement speed. When I switch over to weapon slot 1, you can see that it bumps it up to a whopping 56% more armor and evasion, along with 56% increased movement speed. So yeah, the aura magnitude almost, not quite, almost doubles the effectiveness of the banners. So let's get into the Ascendancy and the reason as to why I picked this Ascendancy versus Warrior. Number 1, I wanted to do something different. Number 2, after looking at the possibilities under Witch Hunter, I believed on paper it seemed to be pretty comparable to that of Warrior. Part of the reason why is concentration. So this first node, reducing an enemy's concentration, is not that big of a deal on paper. It reduces their cooldown in between skills, which honestly, it's hard to notice because many of them use skills so rapidly. The second piece is No Mercy. So deal up to 40% more damage to enemies based on their missing concentration. Now remember the difference between increased damage and more damage. More damage is an independent multiplier stacked upon all of the increased damage. And there's not many opportunities to obtain more damage. So that's a huge boost to be able to go that route. Moving over to Source Ward, I was hesitant to do this because this had gotten nerfed. It now reduces your armor and evasion by 50%, but I decided to take the leap once I got enough armor and evasion to see how it worked out. And let me tell you, as of right now, my character is not completely unkillable, but the fact that under banner he can take a 60,000+ damage single hit for elemental, almost 70k, and over a 20,000 damage physical hit is pretty significant, with a recovery or an effective hit point pushing 900,000 to 1 million. Source Ward is very powerful if you can have the armor and evasion to back it up. And of course, you have to get the physical and chaos. Without it, physical and chaos will just slaughter you. I do have 1700 life, but 1700 life is nothing compared to the potential 16,000 source ward that I can get on top of my life. Now keep in mind that while sitting here in base, I may only have 10,000 armor and 17,000 evasion. In combat, with everything up and under banner, I'm pushing almost 26, 27,000 armor and nearly 29 to 30,000 evasion. He's incredibly tanky and extremely hard to kill. Let's get into the skill tree now. I'm not going to go over each individual stat and node. I'll just kind of tell you my thought process as I was going through this. I am recording the audio after the initial video here. As far as the skill tree is concerned, I'm just going for as much armor and evasion as I can find defensively. Now keep in mind, armor and evasion, every node I take for those also increases my survivability or my max hit capability as well. I am going for attack speed throughout the skill tree where I can find it, if it's within the realm of reason to go for. Because attack speed does kind of help speed up it a little bit. Fortunately, Rolling Slam was buffed slightly in a way. The action time had an added 1.5 before, and now it's reduced down to a 1. But they did reduce the overall damage with it. But if I remember correctly when I'd done the math, it still came out to almost a 10% damage increase overall. Yeah, here you can see I selected some physical cluster nodes, to some major armor and evasion nodes. And I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to the part where we get to the major notables or the major cluster nodes. For this jewel socket, I went with Prism of Belief and +3 to Rolling Slam skills. I picked Rolling Slam because it is the, the everyday driver here. It's the skill I'm using the majority of the time. I alternate between that and Stampede. That way to be able to cycle the ancestral slams between the two of them. And the timing works out pretty darn well. For the major clusters here, you can see that, of course, I'm picking almost every node surrounding the surrounded nodes. Because as you're well aware, when I'm surrounded, I get significant damage boost, and I only need one enemy to be considered surrounded. So it's a significant bump in damage and defense. I very briefly wanted to recover this skill point as well, or this Atlas node, and that's the one where you get evasion per every armor on your gloves. That's why I am maxing out as much armor on the gloves as possible, as opposed to going with a hybrid, because having 858 armor also gives me 858 evasion. This next one's also major. I've redone my skill tree maybe 3 or 4 times. Ignites are awful because ignites cut straight through sorcery ward. They're one of the most powerful degens or damage over times in the game coming from the enemies, and being able to eliminate that entirely, because of course I'm strength based, and so I have mostly red support gems, so it makes me immune to ignite. Having a flask just didn't quite cut it, and the flask just doesn't have enough uses and is too long to recharge, so I decided to go spend the extra points to go after the immunity to ignite. Once again, back to another cluster involving the damage while surrounded. If I could go up 3 levels, if I wanted to go up 3 levels, it's not that I can't. I'm about 25% the way up this level now. I'd be able to finish it out. It's not going to make that much of a difference at this point. Of course, going for banner skills, I have the maxed place number of banners on both, and so that is a permanent node, whether it's weapon slot 1 or 2, because it may do some wonky things if you only have it selected on the primary weapon slot and not on the secondary. It could potentially eliminate the banners, so that would be no good. Then, of course, here, this is part of the first weapon set, going for just aura magnitude, banner duration, resistances under banner, and banner AoE. The next jewel that I have is the Heart of the Well, probably one of the most common jewels in the game that people use. Just extra lightning damage and extra chaos damage, because chaos damage isn't as heavily mitigated by resistances. The movement speed and attack speed was nice, but I wanted the lightning damage specifically so that way I could apply shocks, because getting the extra 20% increased damage taken to them is a pretty significant bump in damage. And it's not hard to get, even though I don't have much increased lightning damage. Looking at more strength nodes coming down here, and of course you can see my weapon slot 2, selecting a lot of these mace skills or ancestral slams or ancestral boosted skills. Those were all significant. The next jewel I'm using, of course, is Megalomaniac. I went with Crushing Verdict because it was just 50% increased attack damage, 30% stun build up. The 5% reduced attack speed doesn't matter, but that is Giant Slayer. It just simply helps against unique and rare monsters, another flat 25%. It was pretty cheap. It was one of the better ones to get because I was just looking for damage. I don't need more survivability at this point. So yeah, just simply went with both of those simply for the damage aspects. Moving along to the final part of the tree, just one of the last jewels that I have in here. It was just a rare jewel, just some attack damage and then increased damage against enemies with fully broken armor. It was a bigger multiplier to do that. Then, of course, the stun build up. I corrupted it, got 6-2 int, wasn't a big deal. Originally, I was using a jewel that gave me blood magic as well, because trying to use mana as a mace build or just a strength-based build, your mana pool's small and the skills cost 300 to 400 mana. And so it would only allow you for a couple hits before you run out. Moving it to strength is a lot better, and the flask are a lot better for it as well. Moving along to the final part of the video here, Mace Strike, I don't even use this skill anymore. It's an irrelevant skill. I used to use it for rage regeneration, but ever since I got the amulet with Eternal Rage, that suffices and meets all needs there. And I used to use it for life over leech, but once again, I don't even have it selected on my hotkeys down there at the bottom. So it's just a dead skill at this point. Sorcery Ward is just simply part of my Ascendancy. And I have just +1 to it. It reduced the cooldown for the recharge by 0.1 second. It's not needed. It doesn't really do much of anything for it. Malice is just a skill that you get from the Scepter. Also not the skill that I actively use. I know it's technically an aura, but I don't switch to it outside of placing the banners. I skipped over Raise Shield because it's not a skill that I use. I only have it on because it's part of the shield. Then, of course, Eternal Rage is the passive for free. Next one, the one that I actually use most commonly is Rolling Slam. I use Fist of War to Ancestral boost it every 4 seconds. The timing works very well when alternating between that and Stampede. So that's nice. And Ancestral boost, it gives you 30% more damage and 25% increased AoE. So it's a huge multiplier. And I have a 53% chance of performing an aftershock, so that helps out. The next one is Heavy Swing. It's just 35% more melee physical damage. It's a huge bump. The 10% less attack speed is irrelevant. Aftershock 2, that one's huge. It's a 35% chance to perform an additional aftershock. So effectively, it's a 35% chance to do double damage. I have another 18% on the skill tree, so that bumped it up to 53. We need armor break. This is what we used to break armor. Breaking armor allows physical skills to do 20% more damage to a target with broken armor. So that's significant. A perfect jewel for that slot or lineage gem would be Ulnatol's Embrace. I just haven't gotten around to spending 480 divs on it. Had gotten up to like 670. It was way too much. Adelu is Bloodletting. I probably butchered that name. That's just a given. Once I put Ulnatol's on, I'm pretty sure the cost of it will break the 400 mark for Rolling Slam. Right now it's around 360. But yeah, Armor Break 3 doesn't cost anything extra. But yeah, Ulnatol's will, and so I'll be able to max that out. So I'll get more damage from that. I've done the math in POB. It'll add another 17% more damage to my Rolling Slam. Wind Dancer was a late addition. I switched to Wind Dancer off of the life regeneration buff. Wind Dancer just felt like it was a better play overall. I have enough life regen when I'm surrounded by enemies, and the flask I have is very good for that. Being able to get almost 30% more evasion, that's how I'm able to stack up almost to 30,000 fully buffed. And so that way I can stack up to almost, 16,000 Source Ward. So that was a huge, significant bump there. I attached blind to it. It's kind of irrelevant. But yeah, when someone hits me, if they actually land a shot, it shoots a little shockwave to pat them and it blinds them, which helps improve my evasion. So that's a huge win as well. Refutation feels borderline broken. I don't need to use it much anymore. I only use it against bosses and hope that he can actually hit me, because if the parry debuff makes them take 50% more damage when they actually strike you. Now, be careful when you use this. If you don't have enough ward, or if you don't have enough armor, you can definitely take a pretty big hit that can do a heavy stun and just completely knock you over when you use this. It doesn't really impact me anymore. It is great when my source ward runs out and I need to rejuvenate it. I can apply this, and when you get hit, when you have this on, it doesn't reset the timer for your source ward. So it kind of feels a little broken in that category, but we won't tell anyone about that. Now for the bulk of our survivability and damage, we'll start off with War Banner. War Banner has a base of 25% more attack damage, 25% increased attack speed, and 50% increased accuracy. When I switch it over to the Scepter, it bumps it to 47 90, and 47. It is a significant bump in damage. Remember, these are more multipliers for the attack damage and the increased attack speed. So my guy hits very hard in there. Of course, I'm just going for increased AoE, increased duration, and things of that sort. Moving on to Hammer of the Gods. Hammer of the Gods, Xerfes Infamy. That one's really nice because I can simply charge it up by doing rolling slams or just spending life in general. So that's nice. So I can just, every time I'm attacking, it's charging up, and then I can cast it on down, and voila, there you go. Don't have to have any significant cooldowns. I do use the super juiced Ancestral Support Gem. It's a 14-second cooldown. Truth is, I'm not going to use it more than 14 seconds. I was using it on map bosses, pinnacle bosses, or to close the breach at the end. It's kind of fun that if you time it correctly, it will come down and just kill all the rare monsters in one shot. And so as soon as they pop up, it instantly closes, and that's a good feeling. Once again, this more physical melee damage, no brainer. The attack speed doesn't matter. The additional aftershock, I think for this one, it's also about 53% additional chance for an aftershock. So 53% chance to double damage. Seems pretty good. And so we'll move on to the next skill. Scavenged Plating has a good defensive buff. You can get up to 10 stacks of it. Every stack gives you 4% more armor. It's the reason why I use Scavenged Plating, because it just adds a significant amount of armor. We break armor in basically one hit. Moving on to Stampede. Use Momentum. You travel 2 meters, you do 40% more damage. It's a nice buff there. We also use the Ancestral Boosted one here. Once again, alternate between that and Rolling Slam. Works well. Magnified Area. Heavy Swing, does more damage. The attack speed is almost irrelevant. And Heft. There's probably better support gems than Heft by far. There's a couple lineage gems that would work really well in here. They're just kind of expensive, and I haven't been wanting to spend the 80 to 110 divs for some of the better lineage gems. But that would give it a pretty decent damage boost if I were to do that. Next is one of my favorite skills, Supercharged Slam. That thing's a ridiculous amount of fun. You can charge up to, I think, the four charges of it and just release it, and every charge you charge up, it does more damage. We also select a lot of the same ones for this. We're not doing additional aftershock, though, just because it already has so many additional shocks. I don't believe it doubles each individual shock. It would only just maybe add one to the end. We use Heft. We use Ancestral Boost, the 14 seconds. This is only needed on bosses. I mean, you can use it. I've seen videos of people using it, and it's pretty comical. But yeah, we're only using it for the big hits. More area damage, less area of effect. It's already pretty big, and you're standing pretty close to him, so we don't need supercharged AoE. Here, we're using the Rage Forge. We spend 10 Rage, we get it back in 2 seconds, and it gives you 35% more damage. And there's a chance of not even spending it to begin with. So that part's kind of nice as well. Heavy Swing, this is just a must-have for almost all physical skills that you're using, especially melee. The reduced attack speed doesn't matter. As you can see here, we'll demonstrate it charges up, and it just hits, and hits. It's a decent-sized area. Obviously, it was a lot bigger before having the reduced AoE, but it just hits so hard now at this point. I didn't get into Defiance Banner because we had already kind of briefly touched on it earlier when I was showing that. The base for is 30% more armor and evasion, along with the 30% movement speed. And then, of course, with the fully juiced version, I believe it was around 57% more armor and evasion. So it almost doubles it, not quite. But yeah, I mean, Defiance Banner and War Banner are extremely powerful. And it really helps make this character shine the way that it does. I'm able to do all content in the game, max Delirium, any pinnacle boss with ease. And some things take a little bit of managing or micro because, I mean, you're playing a melee skill. And melee skills can be difficult because you have to get up there and be able to confront the enemies face to face, and they move around a lot. So you sometimes just feel like you're kind of chasing your tail. But yeah, I mean, overall, I would put this in an excellent category right now. It feels very strong. There's probably a couple different things you could do with a Witch Hunter Ascendancy, such as, when you kill enemies, they have a 10% chance of detonating for their max life. Which would give you a lot more AoE, so it could certainly help with the clear and things of that sort, or getting Culling Strike or the Decimating Blow. I don't think there's necessarily any wrong choices there. I just went with Concentration, and Concentration seemed like it was the way to go. You do a lot more damage, 40% more multiplier is no joke across the board, and, reducing their cooldown in between abilities, it's hard for me to notice because most things just die very quickly. Well, anyway, I'll go ahead and put the POB in the information section. And if you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to ask. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you on the next one.